Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I am bringing you the first episode in a new series on this channel, which is basically just an excuse for me to talk about books that I don't normally get a chance to talk about. In each episode of this series, I'm going to be working my way through all of the colours. I basically wanted a way to talk about books that I don't normally get the chance to talk about. They're not books that I would always mention as favourites or mention in a tag video. They're books that I don't have a lot of reasons to talk about. But it's a real shame that I don't. So here is a reason. For each episode in this series, I'm going to pick 5 books that match each colour from my shelves and tell you guys what I thought of them, what my memories of reading these books are, whether I remember reading them at all. Here is the stack I'm going to be talking about today, so let's just get into it. So the first book I want to talk about is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Now, I don't see this cover around very much. It is a hardback. It's got like a wibbling cover. It is signed, and this is before I kind of knew how frequently books were signed. Like, I thought it was this amazing thing that I came across this book that was signed by John Green. I think the frequency to which authors do sign their books has definitely increased in the past few years. I think this must be coming up to 10 years that I've had this book. Maybe 8 years. I'm gonna say it's 8 years that I've had this book. I definitely had a lull in my reading life when I was a teenager. I'm gonna say between the ages of sort of 13 and 16, I wasn't reading very much, and John Green is one of the authors that got me back into reading. At the time of reading this book, I absolutely loved it. Like, it made me cry, like proper ugly cry. And this book was so popular at my school as well. Like, I remember basically every girl in the school was reading this book, even those that weren't really readers. I think there's this weird thing now where people think it's almost like cool to slag off John Green, and I really just don't buy into that at all. There were some of his books that even when I was reading them as a teenager, I didn't think they were amazing, but I did really love The Fault in Our Stars, and I also really loved Looking for Alaska. You know, whether you think his books are good or bad, that's all subjective. There's definitely something impressive about being able to connect with that many readers, like he did with The Fault in Our Stars. I didn't say anything about what this book is about, but I feel like everyone knows, so you don't need me to tell you. Next, I'm going to talk about Pages & Co. Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James. This is the first book in a middle grade series, and I've only read the first book in this, but I know that I'm going to love the second, and I think the third book is out now as well. This series is all about a young girl named Tilly who helps out in her grandparents' bookshop, and she realizes that she has this power where she is able to wander in and out of books. So she can go into the worlds of these books, she can interact with the characters. This first book is all about her discovering that skill, trying to figure out how to control it, but also some family mysteries that she is trying to uncover, especially about her mother. I'm very keen to read the second and the third books in this series. I don't know why I haven't got around to them yet. I loved this book so much. It was just a complete joy, a complete comfort. It's such a cozy book. There's so many really fun things done with like the typesetting in this book and how the typesetting interacts with some of the illustrations. Totally love this book, and I don't talk about it enough, which is why I'm so glad I'm doing this series now. Next, I have Why We Broke Up by Daniel Handler with art by Maria Kalman. This is another book that I feel like gets slagged off quite a lot for being trash. I think it's great. The premise of this book is so interesting. So there is a teenage couple that have broken up, a boy and a girl, and the girl puts together a box of items that are related to their relationship in some way, sends them back to the ex-boyfriend with a letter, and through these objects and these letters, we gradually begin to realize what happened that led to their breakup. This got me in the feels so much. I do understand the criticisms around it, that it seems a little bit melodramatic. Neither of these teenagers seem particularly likable. Have we all forgotten what it felt like to be a teenager and what we were like as teenagers? Everything that happened in my life when I was a teenager was the most dramatic thing to have ever happened to anyone ever. When you're experiencing these feelings of first love and first heartbreak, they're so intense. Like, you've never dealt with any emotions like that before. And I think this book just really encapsulated it. I love how the text and the illustrations work together. I just love the premise of this book. I think it's a really interesting narrative device to use. So I think this book gets a bad rep, and I really like it. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. I read this a couple of years ago now, and it was a really impactful novel. In this book, we follow Cora, who is a slave on a cotton plantation in Georgia. Australia. She is seen as an outcast even among her fellow Africans. And of course, her life as a slave is awful, and as she is approaching womanhood, she knows that is only going to get worse. Then she is told about something called the Underground Railroad, which could be her means of escape. And in this novel, Colson Whitehead reimagines the Underground Railroad quite literally. Cora is a character that you really root for. I mean, obviously you want her to escape. And Colson Whitehead does an incredible job of taking this huge moment from history and having a really personal story connected to it. He does have another book out now called The Nickel Boys, which I've heard incredible things about, so I'm really keen to get my hands on a copy of that as well. And the final book I'm going to talk to you about today is Elizabeth is Missing by Emma Healy. I read this quite a few years ago now, maybe 2014. When I'd read this book, I'd never really read anything like it before. It was at that point in my life where I was kind of only just dipping my toes into fiction for grown-ups. And it's so strange because then I started university and I became convinced that literary fiction was like my absolute favourite. And I do like some literary fiction, I like quite a lot of literary fiction, but really I love commercial fiction. And it's so strange to think back and realise that it didn't click that one of my absolute favourite books at the time was a really commercial piece of fiction. In this book we follow Maud, who is an older woman who is convinced that her friend Elizabeth has gone missing. But nobody really believes Maud about this. She's quite unreliable. She has dementia, so she can't really remember what it is she's supposed to tell people about why she thinks Elizabeth is missing. And when she finds a clue, she can't remember what the clue is. We're also following a dual narrative of Maud in the present day, trying to figure out that mystery, but we're also following her many years earlier and the story of her and her sister. I found this book so enjoyable. It's simultaneously quite a light read, but there is also this really haunting and sinister storyline going on beneath the surface. As with all of these books, I haven't spoken about this book on the channel for quite some time, so I'm really glad to have given myself the opportunity to talk to you guys about this book because it is so good. So there we have it. They are all of the read books that I would like to talk to you guys about today. Do leave me a comment and let me know if you have read any of these books, what you thought of them. If you want to find out more about them, they will be linked down below in the description. And if you don't have anything specific to say, leave me your favorite red emoji. That's all I'm going to talk about today. I will see you guys in my next video and also in the next episode of this series where I will be talking about a bunch of orange books. I hope you guys are doing well. I'll speak to you soon. Don't forget to leave me your favorite red emoji.